Okay, everyone, so if you could get started. First, I think we have a safety briefing, then we'll have the playing of the two national anthems, and then we'll get the formal part of the proceedings started. Okay, so.
Welcome to the University Inn and Conference Center. We place a high priority on preserving your health and safety. Please give me your attention for a few moments as I outline the emergency procedures to be followed at today's event. This building is equipped with a fire alarm system. In the event of an emergency, the alarm will sound. Since there are no planned fire drills for today, if the alarm sounds, it will be treated as a real emergency. Once the alarm has sounded, calmly make your way through one of the exits. These two exits, which are clearly marked, are to the left and the right of the media stage area. Please take a moment to identify the exits nearest to you. Once outside the room, make your way to the muster point, which is located east of the building that abounds the St. Augustine Circular Road. Stay at the muster point and await further instructions. In the event of an earthquake, stay calm, look out for falling debris. Once this shaking stops, exit the building in a calm and orderly manner and assemble at the muster point where you'll receive further instructions. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Could you just stand for the two national anthems, please? Okay, so pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Pleasant good morning, sorry, to everyone. I still have the idea that we normally do these things in the afternoon. But thank you for coming out early this morning to discuss with us these very important issues. I also want to thank all our partners from the Embassy of China in terms of helping to organize this particular event. So, His Excellency, Councillor Yang Han, Deputy Head of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Sarah Vanakumar, Director of Graduate Studies and Research, U.W.I, St. Augustine, His Excellency Dr. Paul Byam, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Director of Bilateral Relations at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Ambassador Naomi Espinosa Madrid, Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, His Excellency Alvaro Enrique Sanchez Cordero, Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, other distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished representatives of the private sector, international organization and civil society, members of the academic community, colleagues and students, members of the media, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege to welcome you all to the Institute of International Relations, and in particular, the University of the West Indies, to participate in this diplomatic dialogue hosted jointly with the Embassy of the People's Republic of China to Trinidad and Tobago. This dialogue on the theme True Multilateralism and Joint Development Prosperity, China-Caribbean Cooperation from a Global Side View was deliberately chosen because it reflects our conviction that South-South collaboration is one of the keys to sustainable development in the Caribbean. China has distinguished itself globally as a leader in innovation from digital infrastructure and artificial intelligence to renewable energy and advanced manufacturing. Over the course of this transformation, it has overcome many structural weaknesses, some of which still bedevil our region. Our university is therefore eager to connect with that expertise and experience to help address these regional challenges. In this context, our institution and the University of the West Indies in particular stand ready to deepen people-to-people connections through language programs, academic cross-fertilization in diplomacy and international affairs, and scientific and technological partnership. This diplomatic dialogue represents one of those collaborations. To start us off on the front foot, we have assembled a formidable opening panel to set the tone for the rest of our discussions. To open the dialogue, we have Professor Sarah Vanna Kumar, followed by Her Excellency Ambassador Naomi Madrid, and we also have Ambassador Dr. Paul Bayam, and last but by no means least is His Excellency Consular Yang Han, Deputy Head of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So just by way of short introductions, not to take too long, Professor Sarah, as we know him affectionately, is a professor of plant pathology and served as head of the Department of Food Production within the Faculty of Food and Agriculture at the University of the West Indies. He currently serves as Director of Graduate Studies. Since August 2023, he has over 20 years of experience in food systems with subtropical and tropical production systems. His research focuses on identifying hazardous pesticide, studying the health impacts of pesticide, and developing sustainable inputs for pest management in the Caribbean. Her Excellency Naomi Espinosa Madrid officially assumed office as the 8th Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States in January 2025. She is a career diplomat with over 3 decades of distinguished service. Ambassador Madrid is a seasoned leader in fostering regional and global collaboration. She has consistently championed sustainable development, human rights, innovative partnership, forging alliances between government, civil society, and international organizations. Ambassador Dr. Paul Bayam is a diplomat by profession. He has served Trinidad and Tobago overseas missions in Jamaica, in the US, Washington, DC, and New York. And he also has extensive diplomatic experience in Latin America with posting in Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, and Bolivia. Dr. Bayam has also served as the head of delegations to a number of regional and international conferences. Consular Yang Han graduated from Beijing Foreign Studies University and completed advanced studies in international relations at Peking University. He has over 20 years of diplomatic experience. He joined the Chinese Foreign Service in 2003 and has participated in numerous overseas visits by Chinese leaders and held several diplomatic roles. Since April 2022, he has served as Deputy Head of Mission and Consular at the Chinese Embassy here in Trinidad and Tobago. We therefore have a panel with a wealth of experience in diplomacy, global affairs, and science. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Sarah to make his opening remarks. Professor.
His Excellency Councillor Yang Han, Deputy Head of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, His Excellency Dr. Paul Bayam, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Director of Bilateral Relations at the Ministry of Foreign and Curriculum Affairs of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Ms. Yomi Espinosa Madrid, Secretary General Association of Caribbean States, other distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished representatives of the private sector, international organizations and civil society, members of the academic community, colleagues and students, members of the media, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Now, it is with great pleasure and honor I welcome you to the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus for this diplomatic dialogue on South-South cooperation, hosted jointly by the Institute of International Relations and the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in Trinidad and Tobago. Today's engagement is a symbol of enduring friendship between the Caribbean and China, a partnership that continues to evolve within the changing global economic landscape. And of course, we know how the geopolitical situations as well as the other economic situations are developing in the recent years. The International Monetary Fund has described the current conjuncture as a period of rebalancing in which developing and emerging economies now collectively account for a majority share of global GDP in purchasing power parity terms, a marked shift from only 2 decades ago. When I looked into some of the data, it shows that in the few decades, there has been a lot of growth potential increased with South-South cooperation in trade and also in economic benefits. It also stated that there are so much more untapped potentials. Therefore, this shift is not merely statistical. It reflects the historic emergence of the global South in the global narrative on economic development, innovation, and cooperation. In this new landscape, China-Caribbean relations have deepened significantly. Bilateral trade between China and Caribbean surpassed $9.7 billion in 2023, representing a 10-fold increase since 2002. Beyond trade, the cooperation extends into education, renewable energy, infrastructure development, and cultural exchanges, as said by our acting director, Dr. Siratan, in his introduction remarks. These linkages exemplify the dynamism and mutual benefits that South-South partnerships can achieve when anchored in trust and shared development goals. At the University of the West Indies, we are deeply committed to advancing such partnerships. Our institution has long served as a bridge between academia, diplomacy, and development practices. As the premier institution in the Caribbean for tertiary education, U.W.I plays a pivotal role in connecting global knowledge systems to regional realities. We are therefore honored to serve as the intellectual host for this dialogue. Since I'm originally from the Faculty of Food and Agriculture, I know there were many technicians and graduate students and undergraduate students trained by various universities and institutions of China through several seminars and workshops. It's ranging from post-harvest development, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence. I can go on and on and on. So such knowledge transfer and technology transfer is very much important for the region like this, where we have challenges with respect to the size and the small island developing states. Therefore, such connections, such support mutually benefit both the sides, because building the capacity in the region is very much needed. And in that regard, the University of West Indies has its own commitment. I wish to acknowledge in this event to the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in Trinidad and Tobago for its consistent engagement with our university and with the wider Caribbean community. The region has benefited, as I have mentioned, through several scholarships, trainings, cultural initiatives, and people-to-people exchanges. As we engage in dialogue today, let us reaffirm our commitment to deepening this cooperation, not only through policy dialogue, but also through joint research, student mobility, and the co-creation of knowledge that advances sustainable development across the global South. Even in the coming month, that's in November 26, 27, 28, we have planned for a mega research festival at the St. Augustine campus, which is going to focus on the research that align with the sustainable development goals, and also the research that aligns with the economic diversification of the country, which can focus on the agriculture value addition, food security, trade and tourism, and creative industry, and so many other things as well. I take this opportunity to invite you all to that research festival, where we are going to have a lot of events, including the oral and poster presentations and panel discussions, and particularly the workshop will be on university, industry, government partnerships, going to take place on 28th of November. So really, I'm pleased to extend my invitation to all of you for that particular event. Now, on behalf of our Pro-Vice Chancellor and Campus Principal, Professor Rosemary Bell Antwine, and on behalf of the University of the West Indies, I extend gratitude to His Excellency, the Ambassador, and their whole team, and also to our academic colleagues at the Institute of International Relations. We have wonderful people, I need not say, and you would have seen through several collaborations, especially with Dr. Siratan and also Dr. Georgiana Shami and Dr. Montot. We have many people, Dr. Martinez. So we have wide range of intellects. And of course, I'm seeing Professor of Practice, Professor Winston Dukran. So the U.W.I is actually the hub of intellectuals, I need not say here again. So we are really much grateful to the embassy as well as to our academic colleagues and to all participants whose presence here lends both meaning and momentum to this dialogue. May today's discussions strengthen the bonds of understanding, respect, and cooperation between our peoples. Together, let us continue to build bridges of learning and friendship that will endure for generations. With this, I wish you all the very best, and may God bless everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sarah. And I want to acknowledge that the Minister in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Honorable Neil Gosain, is here. So welcome, Minister. We move on to the next speaker now, and I want to invite Ms. Espinosa Madrid, Secretary General, please.
Councillor Yang Han, Deputy Head of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in Trinidad and Tobago and dear friend. Ambassador Paul Biram, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Director of Bilateral Relations at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Sarah, we were told we could call you that, Director of Graduate Studies and Research at the University of the West Indies, San Augustine. Dear representatives of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, distinguished and honorable Minister of Trade, who was just announced, and distinguished professors, students, and colleagues from the University of the West Indies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the private sector, good morning to all. It is an honor for me to participate in this diplomatic dialogue. I wish to express our sincere appreciation to the Institute of International Relations at the University of the West Indies and to the Embassy of the People's Republic of China for convening this important exchange. The theme that brings us together today, true multilateralism and joint development prosperity, China-Caribbean cooperation from a global South perspective, invites us to reflect on the power of dialogue, the importance of listening, and the need to build understanding between regions that share a vision of solidarity, inclusion, and mutual respect. For the Association of Caribbean States Secretariat, opportunities such as this one, where representatives of governments, academia, and diplomacy can reflect on how our regions may work together to advance shared objectives for sustainable development and peace, are of great significance. The ACS is an intergovernmental mechanism that brings together 35 member states and territories that share the Caribbean Sea as a common space that collectively makes up the Greater Caribbean. It was created with a clear purpose: to bridge the gaps that have historically separated Latin America from the islands of the Caribbean, promoting consultation, cooperation, and concerted action, serving as a regional mechanism for dialogue and consensus building, and strengthening the collective voice of the Greater Caribbean on the international stage. This mission can only be fulfilled by recognizing the immense diversity of our region, a diversity that is both a great strength and a great responsibility. We are a multilingual, multicultural, and politically plural region, united by a sea that has shaped our history, our economies, our identities, and our shared aspirations. The Caribbean Sea is our point of convergence. It connects us geographically and defines us as a region. It is a space of life, of trade, culture, and memory, but also a space of shared challenges: climate vulnerability, coastal erosion, pollution, and the pressure on marine resources, all of which threaten the sustainability of development and the well-being of our communities. For this reason, the ACS works to make the Caribbean Sea a symbol of unity, sustainability, and cooperation. And it is within this context that international economic, technological, and institutional cooperation takes on a decisive role. In today's global context, South-South cooperation has become indispensable, not only as a tool for technical exchange, but as a means to drive structural transformation. Addressing the challenges we face requires collaboration that transcends borders, languages, and political differences. This is precisely where the ACS plays a unique role. By advancing a regional vision built on joint projects in strategic areas such as sustainable tourism, transportation, connectivity, trade and investment, disaster risk management, and the protection, of course, of the Caribbean Sea. Beyond specific programs, however, our goal is also to uphold a political and ethical principle that large and small states, island and continental nations alike, can work together in a spirit of respect, equality, solidarity, and full respect for our sovereignty. This principle is deeply rooted in the spirit of South-South cooperation, which has long been a pillar of our collective development experience. Within this framework, dialogue is essential, a dialogue that allows us to share knowledge, embrace our differences, and move forward in strengthened economic, technological, and institutional cooperation with a focus on the development and well-being of our peoples. In this context, the People's Republic of China has become a key actor in South-South cooperation and a partner with a growing presence in the Caribbean. China plays an important role in strengthening international cooperation and has built fruitful relationships with several Caribbean countries. Partnerships that have contributed to infrastructure development, improved risk management, technological exchange, and human capacity building. At the same time, we recognize the diversity of perspectives within the greater Caribbean regarding international relations. The ACS, as an inclusive mechanism, respects the sovereign decisions of its member states and upholds the right to conduct foreign policy in accordance with their principles, interests, and national priorities. From our region, it is essential to value cooperation that is grounded in mutual respect, sovereign equality, transparency, and alignment with both national and regional priorities. It is also crucial to advance towards a more structured and strategic form of cooperation, one that goes beyond financing or isolated projects and instead promotes productive transformation, technological advancement, and diversification that leads to sustainable economies, not only for markets, but improving the lives and well-being of our peoples. For if there is one lesson that we have learned, it is that development cannot be understood solely as economic growth. It must be rooted in well-being, social justice, and human dignity. We are living in a decisive moment. The international system is experiencing increasing fragmentation and polarization, giving rise to a multipolar reality with diverse and at times competing visions of development. In this context, true multilateralism, grounded in equality, inclusiveness, and mutual respect, is more necessary than ever. For the greater Caribbean, genuine multilateralism must translate into a real commitment to inclusive cooperation, solidarity, and joint solutions to global challenges. It must ensure that every nation, regardless of size, wealth, or geography, has a voice and a meaningful place at the table. It must also foster an international system that recognizes the particular vulnerabilities of small island developing states and enables them to access resources, technology, and cooperation on fair and equitable terms. From the ACS, we advocate for a world in which regions recognize the greater Caribbean and it is no longer viewed as a periphery, but as an active contributor to global solutions in climate action, digital transformation, sustainable trade, and the governance of the global commons. In that sense, the dialogue between China and the greater Caribbean should be seen as an opportunity for mutual benefit, anchored on trust, respect, and cooperation. Distinguished participants, we believe it is essential to foster a dialogue that is open, transparent, and grounded in the respect of sovereignty and non-interference. The ACS Secretariat stands as a bridge for understanding and cooperation, committed to strengthening trust and mutual benefit among the peoples of the Global South. The world needs new models of cooperation, models that transcend competition and promote complementarity. The Global South, and particularly the greater Caribbean, can play a pivotal role in shaping this new global governance architecture. As I mentioned at the beginning, our region has historically been a meeting place of peoples, languages, and cultures. We have learned to live together in diversity, and that experience makes us a region naturally inclined towards dialogue and consensus building. In these uncertain times, our region remains true to its principles of dialogue, solidarity, and respect. The future we aspire to, one of sustainable development and shared well-being, can only be realized through cooperation, peace, and the dignity of our peoples. This, in essence, is the spirit of true multilateralism, a commitment to our shared humanity built on cooperation, peace, and human dignity. I thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellency. And I now invite Dr. Bayam to make his presentation.
A very pleasant morning to everyone. I'm very thankful to you, sir, as both in your capacity as the MC, Dr. Dave Sirata, Acting Director, Institute of International Relations of the U.W.I, St. Augustine, both in your capacity as a co-host of this event and also in the distinguished capacity in which I know you all along, heading the IIR through many collaborations. And through you, I also extend greetings to others in the IIR. I wish to acknowledge as well Mr. Yang Han, Counselor, Embassy of the People's Republic of China, and ask through you that warm greetings go to your Ambassador, Ambassador Ren, since China is the other major host of this event this morning. I am told that we are honored by the presence of Dr. Colin Neal. Forgive me, I'm just catching my breath a little. Forgive me. I'm told we are here honored by Professor Colin Neal Gosine, Dr. Colin Neal Gosine, a ministry with which my ministry has a healthy synergy. And I'm very honored by your presence and thankful to be here in your presence as well. I wish to further acknowledge Your Excellency, Alvaro Enrique Sanchez Cordero, Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Your Excellencies, heads of diplomatic missions and other members of the Diplomatic Corps. Your Excellency Noemi Espinosa Madrid, Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, and other heads of international organizations accredited to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Forgive me. Professor Min Shou, Director, Center for Caribbean Studies, Hangzhou Normal University. Professor Wei Sheng Kai Zhen, Distinguished Professor of Law, Shanghai Jiao Tong University Law School. I spy within the audience my former Minister of Foreign Affairs, once upon a time, Professor Winston Dukaran, Professor of Practice at U.W.I. I also see a former minister sitting at another table, Mr. Mariano Brown, good morning. And I see an old friend from the chamber, the Southern Chamber, Mr. Kiran Singh, good morning as well. The moderators and panelists of this morning's panel discussion, lecturers and students of the Institute of International Relations, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. Forgive me, I have a bit of a congestion in my throat. I am honored to be present for the second time this week within the distinguished halls of the University of the West Indies at the St. Augustine campus to deliver special remarks. This morning, it is my duty and pleasure to deliver a brief address at this opening session of the diplomatic dialogue on the theme, True Multilateralism and Joint Development Prosperity, China-Caribbean Cooperation from a Global South View. I do so on behalf of the Honorable Sean Sobers, MP, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, who is not able to be here today due to other commitments. Before I continue, allow me to express heartfelt commiseration with the people of Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, and the Bahamas, and other islands, our sister Caribbean countries, who have been directly impacted by the sheer force of Hurricane Melissa, the strongest storm to affect the region this year, and also one of the most powerful tropical cyclones in the world this year. Trinidad and Tobago stands in solidarity with you during this difficult time. May divine providence enable a quick recovery and help bring much comfort while strengthening the resilience of those who have been most severely affected by the hurricane's fury or otherwise affected in its aftermath. In her statement at the general debate of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September of this year, the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, SC, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, emphasized this country's commitment to multilateralism, notwithstanding the strains that many countries undergo from time to time in adhering to its ideals in modern times. Thankfully, there remain examples throughout the world of multilateralism, which are generally acknowledged as collective action to achieve common goals based on the principles of inclusion, equality, and shared values. The enduring China-Caribbean relationship is one of these examples. From the very start, formal ties were established on the basis of mutual respect and for mutual benefit. This was achieved notwithstanding the geographical distance and the forgive me, I shall read that again. This was achieved notwithstanding the geographical distance and the differences in culture, size, and economic capacity. Instead, emphasis was placed on the well-interwoven threads that bind us still, including our shared status as members of the Global South. In recognition of this fact, and with a view to achieving joint development, China has provided significant technical assistance, helping to develop key and emerging sectors in Caribbean countries. This has taken the form of general and specialized training, scholarships, and the dispatch of experts and volunteers to Caribbean countries. Equally as important, China has been a source of grant and preferential rate financing, which served as a boon to Caribbean governments that have faced reduced access to international financial markets due to high external debt, high vulnerability, and graduation and de-risking policies. Through that financing, countries across the Caribbean have been able to undertake critical infrastructure projects, such as highways, bridges, hospitals, and schools, forgive me. The inclusion of the Caribbean in the Belt and Road Initiative, initially envisioned for the historic Silk Road route, was further a boost in this regard. Similar to our Caribbean counterparts, Trinidad and Tobago has been a beneficiary of this approach, philosophy, and practical and pragmatic South-South engagement. As I speak, a group of senior public officials is in China for specialized training in the field of information and communication technology. Last month, Trinidad and Tobago and China entered into an economic and technical cooperation agreement through which an aid grant valued at RMB 100 million, approximately TT 94 million, has been donated to Trinidad and Tobago. In the spirit of multilateralism, two mechanisms exist to facilitate regular engagement between China and the Caribbean. The Foreign Ministry consultations, last convened in August this year, provide a platform for achieving shared objectives and coordinating activities relating to economic, social, cultural, and scientific development. The Economic and Trade Cooperation Forum aims to enhance economic development, facilitate trade exchanges, and strengthen cooperation between China and the Caribbean. This type of engagement led to the establishment of the China-Caribbean Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Fund in 2022. Through this fund, Trinidad and Tobago has already received 2 batches of supply totaling almost TT1 million. Similarly, the China-Caribbean Development Center, established in the same year, focuses on research and activities for poverty alleviation, food security, development financing, and climate change mitigation, among other areas. Despite China having diplomatic relations with just 9 of its members, the Caribbean community has received its support via the Caribbean Development Bank. China has taken a similar approach to other regional institutions. Consequently, the relationship between China and the Caribbean is a notable demonstration of multilateralism, joint development, and prosperity, as outlined in the thematic statement for today's event. As I conclude, I wish to congratulate the Institute of International Relations and the Embassy of the People's Republic of China for their timely collaboration in hosting this event. I am confident that today's academic discourse will redound to the benefit of the China-Caribbean relationship providing insights for its continued blossoming and evolution, and for our own national and regional development and the attainment of our sustainable development goals. May the bonds of friendship, the strong spirit of partnership, and the best interests of all our peoples guide us into a future that is full of earnest endeavors and resplendent successes. And as I say so, I once again wish to congratulate the U.W.I and particularly single out Professor Duasami Saravara Kumar, Graduate Studies and Research, representing Professor Bella Antoine today, to thank you again for your kind introduction and for your dedication to this especially important area of academic enterprise. I thank you all again for the warm reception, ladies and gentlemen, and for your very kind attention. I wish you a productive day. May divine providence look upon us all favorably so that we will have a wonderful outcome and that events such as these will be replicated and expanded in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Bayam. And now I want to invite Councillor Yang Hang, Deputy Head of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, to make his comments. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siratan, and thank you all the distinguished speakers before me. I believe it will be a very long morning, so while all protocols observed, allow me to save everyone's time, allow me to skip the long salutations. And the honorables, excellencies, dear guests and friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. It is my great honor and pleasure to attend this very important and significant diplomatic dialogue today. On behalf of my ambassador, His Excellency Ren Hongyan, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to the Institute of International Relations of U.W.I, the University of the West Indies, for organizing this wonderful event. And also, I would like to express my gratitude to my embassy colleagues who have put in so much hard work to achieve it, realize it. I also want to send our warmest greetings to all our friends present here, as well as to the distinguished professors online and all guests online in China, despite the 12 hours of time difference. Thank you for all your sustained attention and valuable support for the China-Caribbean cooperation. There's an ancient saying in China: nothing, not even mountains and seas, can separate people with common goals and ideals. Although China and the Caribbean region, Caribbean countries are geographically distant and differ in size, history, and culture, we are all developing countries, or in other words, we are all members of the Global South. Our people share the same aspiration of a better life, and our governments are committed to improving livelihoods and advancing, the prosperity. Therefore, we share a natural common language when it comes to development. In 2013, President Xi Jinping made a historic visit to Trinidad and Tobago, during which he met with the leaders of different Caribbean countries like Trinidad and Tobago, of course, and Antigua and Barbuda and Guyana, and other Caribbean leaders, opening a new era of China-Caribbean cooperation. In 2015, the China CELAC Forum was officially launched, marking a new track for the China-Caribbean cooperation towards institutionalization. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the official operation of the China CELAC Forum. So I would like to share some figures and some elements of these 10 years. Over the past decade, political mutual trust between China and the Caribbean countries has been continuously consolidated. Both have steadfastly supported each other's core interests and major concerns, opposed power politics and interference in other countries' internal affairs, and jointly safeguard the interests of the global South. All the leaders of the 9 Caribbean countries having diplomatic relations with China have visited China, and all these countries have reaffirmed their resolute adherence to the One China principle, which is the cornerstone for China's development of relations with other countries and international organizations. Over the past decade, practical cooperation between our two sides has been notably deepened. The trade has continued to grow. In 2024, so last year, China's trade volume with the 9 CARICOM countries and with the 25 member states of the ACS was respectively $5.75 billion and $180.36 billion, increasing respectively by 68.1% and 98.5% compared with 10 years ago. So I'm proud to share with you these figures. Significant progress has been made in high quality Belt and Road Initiative cooperation. 8 CARICOM countries have joined the BRI, and key cooperations projects such as the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate in Trinidad and Tobago and the new Demerara Harbor Bridge in Guyana have taken root in the region. Over the past decade, people-to-people exchanges between China and the Caribbean countries have become even closer. Confucius institutes and classrooms have flourished in the region. Latin American and Caribbean music and dance represented by the steel pan and the soca music are spreading more extensively in China. Traditional Chinese cultural activities such as Spring Festival celebrations and dragon boat races are widely welcomed in the region. 6 Caribbean countries, including Grenada, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, and Suriname have signed comprehensive mutual visa exemptions agreements with China. I must say, we all should be very proud of what we have achieved together. Yet as we celebrate these joint gains, our world today is living through accelerating changes unseen in a century. The global, contemporary, and historical shifts are unfolding in an unprecedented manner. Deficits in global peace, development, security, and governance continue to widen unabated. And unfortunately, as hegemonism and protectionism surge, the cause of peace and development faces daunting challenges. The world once again stands at a historical crossroads. For the future and the welfare of humanity, President Xi Jinping has successfully put forward important concepts such as building a community with a shared future for mankind and the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative, contributing Chinese solutions and wisdom to build a better world. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Plus conference held in September this year, President Xi proposed the Global Governance Initiative for the first time, focusing on the subject of our times, namely what kind of a global governance system to build and how to reform and improve global governance, emphasizing 5 core concepts, including sovereign, equality, international rule of law, multilateralism, people-centered approach, and real actions. The initiative offers a way forward for the reform of global governance and provides an action guide for the international community to work together and advance jointly. Last week, the 4th plenary session of the 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China was successfully launched in Beijing. The session reviewed and adopted the 15th 5-year plan for national economic and social development, outlining China's development blueprint for the next 5 years. As you know, Chinese people are very good at planning, right? So the blueprint now we have, so next step is to implement it. We are convinced that as a responsible major country and the largest developing country, China will provide more stability and certainty for the world economy and bring broad opportunities to countries around the world, especially the global south, of which the Caribbean nations are a key component. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, at the 4th ministerial meeting of the China CELAC Forum held in May this year, President Xi announced 5 programs, including solidarity, development, civilization, peace, and people-to-people connectivity, to shape a new blueprint for a Caribbean and China community of a shared future. So China is committed to collaborating with the regional countries on these 5 programs implementation, upholding the true multilateralism, deepening cross-field cooperation, and advancing development, prosperity, and friendship. First, we could enhance unity and collaboration. China has always and will continue to work to deepen political mutual trust with our Caribbean friends on the basis of mutual respect and equality, supporting one another on core interests and their efforts to unite, grow stronger, and play a greater role on the international stage. China takes seriously the legitimate concerns of Caribbean small island developing states on global challenges like climate change, the food security, of course, and poverty reduction, as well as transnational crime. We will keep providing tailored assistance to help them achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We also welcome people from all sectors in the Caribbean to visit China and exchange governance experiences. Second, we could boost common prosperity. China is willing to take high-quality Belt and Road cooperation as a platform, in fact, to explore more potentials with regional partners in infrastructure, agriculture, traditional and renewable energy, 5G communications, digital economy, and artificial intelligence. China will import more high-quality products from the Caribbean countries and open its vast market wider to outstanding enterprises from the region, allowing them to seize the business opportunities offered by the world's second largest economy. Third, we could deepen people-to-people connectivity. China is willing to strengthen cooperation between the two sides in education, culture, media, sports, tourism, and any other fields. Give full play to the role of Confucius Institutes and launch more cultural exchanges activities and academic activities like this. China will provide more government scholarships and training opportunities, support regional countries in carrying out Chinese language education, further facilitate personnel exchanges, deepen mutual understanding to keep the tree of China-Caribbean friendship evergreen. Last, but certainly not least, we could and we must promote regional peace and stability. Peace is the foundation of development, and without peace, there can be no development and prosperity. As the Beijing Declaration issued during the China Select Forum this May, we endorse the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, and the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in Latin America and the Caribbean. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, China stands ready to enhance collaboration with regional countries in transnational crime combat, as well as disaster prevention and mitigation, while opposing any attempts to undermine regional peace and stability. Before I conclude my speech, I would like to share a Chinese proverb. A bosom friend afar brings a distant land near. China and the Caribbean have empowered each other, achieved common success, and shared interdependent growth and a brighter future. Cooperation between the two sides has served as an exemplary model for South-South cooperation, boasting vitality and broad development prospects. Looking ahead, we believe that China and the Caribbean countries will deepen their friendship, jointly create prosperity based on equality, mutual benefit, cooperation, and innovation, and build an even closer China-Caribbean community with a shared future. Thank you all, and I sincerely wish the upcoming discussions yield fruitful outcomes and fruits. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yan Han, for a very insightful presentation. I want you to join with me once again in congratulating all the presenters this morning. As you would have heard from the all the presenters, central themes in terms of the things that are important to us and those involved in the diplomatic and international relation fields is themes of multilateralism, South-South cooperation, equality, and mutual cooperation. Those are the dominant themes that is going to make our region and by extension the world stronger. So I want to thank you all, Excellencies, for your wonderful presentation, and we hope that we could have similar engagements in the future. Okay, so this segment of today's proceedings is at an end, so I want you to join me once again in congratulating the Excellencies, and if you could take your seats in the general audience now, that would be great. Thank you. Just by way of some housekeeping information, as you would see from your program, coming up, we have two presentations by Chinese experts, one by Professor Min Zhu on China-Caribbean cooperation and the practice of true multilateralism, a global South perspective on co-construction and shared development, immediately followed by a presentation by Professor Wei Shen on China's new foreign investment law in the new normal. Of course, as you know, China is 12 hours, the time difference between our region and China is about 12 hours. So these experts have taken a lot of time and trouble to present us today. And so we will have virtual presentation, which will be followed by a short coffee break to allow us to set up for the panel discussion to follow, and moderated by Mr. Mariano Brown. And at the end of today's proceedings, we're going to have a Q&A session moderated by Mr. Brown, who will take questions both from the audience here and those online. And we will have a discussion which will include the two professors who are going to be presenting shortly. So I don't know, John, is there ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. So I would invite Professor Min Zhu to make her presentation.
Thank you. You can hear my voice and see my PowerPoint. Okay. So, honorables, excellencies, distinguished colleagues, good morning. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank the embassy to inviting me to share my humble ideas on multilateralism and China-Caribbean cooperation. And also, I want to thank the U.W.I colleagues and the embassy for putting up this very important and meaningful conference together. And it is both humbling and deeply meaningful for me to serve as a keynote speaker at this significant conference. As the director and founder of China's first Caribbean Studies Center, I am very honored to share with you some of our efforts to enhance mutual understanding between China and the Caribbean. So before I move to my presentation, allow me to give some basic information about the Caribbean Studies Center at our university. Our center is dedicated to promoting knowledge of Caribbean history, culture, and literature, etc. in China, and to deepening people-to-people connection across the ocean. Over the years, we have launched the first Caribbean translation series and initiated Caribbean studies in China as an emerging academic field. We have designed, these are the activities we have put up together, and we have designed 8 specialized courses on Caribbean studies. The first of this kind in China because of the geographical distance. Most Chinese people are pretty ignorant about what the Caribbean is about. I remember my first public lecture given about the Caribbean is entitled, "The Caribbean does not only have pirates," because, of the Disney movies, when people in China think of the Caribbean, they relate the area with, the cartoon, the films, and also we have launched 2 academic journals. The first of this kind in China, this one is the Journal of Caribbean Studies. And this on the right is the Journal of Blue Humanities, an emerging academic field in the academic world. And here you can see some of the translation series. And in addition, we have founded an ongoing platform titled Forum on the Mutual Enhancement of Civilizations Between China and the Caribbean. We have many such events. This is an ambassador from Bahamas who just visited us last week. And yesterday, we had the honor of hosting a delegation of diplomats from the 9 Caribbean countries. We had a great time together with the diplomats. So through this forum, we regularly invite distinguished scholars, politicians, and writers to engage in dialogue, including, among others, His Excellency Augustine Brown, as you can see, who visited our university and give lectures. This is my meeting with Prime Minister Gaston Brown in Antigua. And this is the Prime Minister of Grenada. And this is a Minister of Foreign Affairs of Guyana in this May. I conducted an interview with him in the embassy. So this center is vibrantly engaged in dialogues between China and the Caribbean region. We hope that in the future we could have guests from Trinidad and Tobago as well. Actually, I visited U.W.I back in my PowerPoint skipped. Back in 2018. Now you are presenting my PowerPoint for me. So actually, I visited U.W.I back in 2018, and I gave a lecture on the work of V.S. Naipaul because I am a professor of literature, actually. So we have, as I said, we have established very close and friendly relations with leaders and scholars across the Caribbean. And this semester, we also hosted several delegations. Just now I mentioned the delegation of diplomats. At the beginning of the semester in September, end of September, we hosted the delegation of influencers from the Caribbean region, including Trinidad and Tobago. And the center is situated in Hangzhou Normal University. I would like to give you a little information about Hangzhou Normal University. Ours is a comprehensive institution comprising 24 schools, encompassing major disciplines such as education, economics, literature, medicine, science, engineering, etc. And 15 of our disciplines, including chemistry, material science, rank among the top 1% worldwide in the Essential Science Indicators Index. The university is home to several national level laboratories and virtual simulation centers and our national please move the PowerPoint. Actually, I can do it. So yeah, next page, please. It's about next page, please. Kindly move. And these page is the courses we have done, the 8 Caribbean courses. All of these are first of this kind in China. We are really devoted to improving Chinese people's awareness and knowledge about the very rich Caribbean history. And in our university, next page, please, about Hangzhou Normal University, we have famous alumni. Many of you may not know that the founder of Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, is our alumni. And he graduated from the very School of International Studies that I am also deaning now. So much for the introduction about my center and my university. I hope someday we could have the honor to establish some kind of cooperation with U.W.I St. Augustine, because we have already had relations with U.W.I Five Islands and Mona. This summer, I visited Jamaica. So I sat and talked with the president of Mona U.W.I. Now I will move to my presentation today. So please move to the next page. Yeah, okay. So today we gather not merely to review past achievements, but to confront fundamental questions about our shared future. In an era of rising unilateralism and protectionism, what constitutes genuine multilateralism? How can global South countries achieve shared prosperity through solidarity and cooperation? So in my presentation, I will try to answer these 4 questions. What is true multilateralism, and why does it matter now more than ever? Secondly, how does China-Caribbean cooperation embody the principles and practice of true multilateralism? And from a global South perspective, what does this cooperation mean for the world? And how can we deepen and expand this cooperation to meet the challenges of the 21st century? Just now, the hurricane that hit Jamaica was mentioned. We face challenges like hurricane, caused by climate change, not only in the Caribbean area, but in China, we have problems caused by climate change too. How can we work together to solve such problems that commonly threat our shared future? So multilateralism is actually not a new concept. I'm going to talk about what is true multilateralism. And this is a call from the Global South. I'm going to address this from these 3 points. First of all, the historical limitations of traditional multilateralism and the contemporary crisis of multilateralism and China's vision of true multilateralism and the Global South imperative. This is a picture of the group of influencers from the Caribbean, headed by Councillor Yang from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China. So as we know, next page, please. Multilateralism is not new. Post-World War II architects believed that they were creating a genuinely multilateral system, one that would prevent past catastrophes and promote universal peace and prosperity. Yet we must soberly acknowledge that historical multilateralism has often been multilateralism of the privileged few, a system dominated by a small cohort of Western powers who not only established the rules, but also controlled how benefits would be distributed. Consider these structural realities: systematic marginalization of developing voices. At international financial institutions, voting power is distributed to give disproportionate influence to wealthy nations, while vast numbers of developing countries hold minimal say in decisions fundamentally affecting their futures. This is number 1. And also, rule making by the few. Trade rules have prioritized developed countries' export interests, while constraining policy space for developing nations to protect nascent industries or pursue industrial upgrading. International frameworks consistently reflect the priorities of their architects. And also, development rights subordinated to external agendas. Development assistance frequently comes with conditionalities bearing little relation to economic growth, but everything to do with external interests. These conditions often undermine rather than advance genuine development, and governance mechanism inadequate to urgent challenges. Despite decades of negotiations, global challenges remain insufficiently addressed. Small island developing states face existential threats, while global inequality reaches unprecedented levels. Just now, Councillor Young talked about the regional peace. It's for the Caribbeans to decide, their own future. It's very important that we have our own says in the governing of our regions. We don't need police from the outside world. And secondly, the contemporary crisis of multilateralism. In recent years, even this imperfect system, the traditional, just now I said, the traditional multilateralism established after World War II has shortcomings. But in recent years, even this imperfect system faces severe strain. We witness aggressive unilateralism, particularly from nations that once championed multilateral cooperation. The pattern is consistent. Multilateral rules are invoked when convenient, discarded when constraining. And we can see weaponization of international institutions. Organizations designed for global cooperation become tools of geopolitical competition. Multilateral Development Bank membership serves as leverage. Development assistance becomes conditional on political alignment, and instrumentalization of trade and finance, tariffs, export controls, and sanctions deployed not for legitimate purposes, but as foreign policy instruments. Everyone is aware of this worldwide now. Dispute settlement mechanism face deliberate weakening. And thirdly, proliferation of exclusionary arrangements. Rather than strengthening universal frameworks, we see exclusive clubs designed to exclude rather than to include, masking geopolitical objectives behind technical language. And this crisis demands articulating what true multilateralism means and requires. And China's vision of true multilateralism. So confronting multilateralism's predicament, China advances this vision. President Xi Jinping has systematically elaborated true multilateralism's essential elements across multiple international forums, articulating principles that resonate profoundly with global South aspirations. First, democratization of international relations. True multilateralism demands democratized international relations. World affairs require consultation among all nations, not dictation by one or a few. All countries, regardless of size, strength, or wealth, stand as equal members of the international community. And every Caribbean nation's voice must carry equal weight in international forums. Development priorities articulated by Caribbean countries cannot be subordinated to external powers' strategic calculations. The UN Charter's sovereign equality principle is not diplomatic nicely, but the foundation of international order. True multilateralism rejects patronizing approaches, recognizing every nation's legitimate interests, valuable perspectives, and the right to chart its own course. And secondly, this is China's vision. We honor the UN-centered global governance. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. So true multilateralism must be UN-centered. Despite inspections, the United Nations remains the most universal and representative international organization, the core platform for global governance. Defending UN authority means defending international community interests upholding the UN Charter means upholding basic international relations norms. Yet we witness repeated attempts to bypass, marginalize, and instrumentalize the UN system. True multilateralism strengthens rather than weakens the UN, reforming institutions to reflect contemporary realities, including developing countries' rise. Thirdly, international law as foundation. Professor Shen is going to talk about China's investment laws. True multilateralism rests on international law. We must adhere to conciliation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. Rules require joint formulation through conciliation, not imposition by one or few countries. This rejects double standards and selective applications. So, international law exists to constrain the powerful, not to weaponize against the weak. Countries can't invoke international law when convenient and abandon it when constraining. So true multilateralism requires consistent adherence by all parties. And the China-Caribbean Cooperation, multilateralism in practice. We can move to the next page. How does China-Caribbean Cooperation embody true multilateralism? This is a picture of Prime Minister Gaston Brown from Antigua when he was giving a lecture in my university and at my center at our forum. How does China-Caribbean Cooperation embody true multilateralism? Our partnership, just now, as Councillor Yang has listed, our effort in the Caribbean region. I have not been to Trinidad, but this summer I was in Antigua and Barbuda and was in Jamaica. People were, the infrastructure projects, were very beneficial to the local citizens, and they deeply appreciate China's contributions, because I'm only a professor, people talk to me pretty freely, without any political concerns. Because during my time there, I went to the street and talked with people. It's very enlightening that, and it's very encouraging to know that the Caribbean people feel that China is practicing multilateralism in practice there, because our investment is not for the profit, as some superpowers do. We mean to help the Caribbean country. So the China-Caribbean Cooperation has some historical foundations, actually, because Trinidad has so many Chinese who contributed to the development of Trinidad. Last year, the ex-ambassador Lisa Liu to China visited our center, and some other people from Trinidad, giving us the history of Chinese in Trinidad of over 250 years. So we have Chinese people not only now, back in the 18th century, Chinese people joined hands with the Caribbean people in the construction of the Caribbean country. And we shared similar traumas, colonialism, poverty. So we Chinese people, through what the Caribbean Studies Center has been doing, whenever we talk about such kind of history that we share with the Caribbean people, Chinese people are deeply touched and are very keen to know more about the Caribbean history. And also, our core principle with the Caribbean is based on equality, mutual benefit, and respect. In my center, I tell my students in my class, by the way, we have MA students devoted to Caribbean studies. They are trained on Caribbean studies, wonderful young people. I told my students, the history of the Caribbean is so important. The culture is so vibrant. If we don't know about the history of the Caribbean, you don't know about the history of globalization, of modernity. The history without the Caribbean, the history of globalization without the chapter of Caribbean is incomplete. But we have writers, V.S. Naipaul, who was born in Trinidad, Port of Spain. He denied all this in one of his books, Middle Passage. He said the Caribbean has no history because history is built on achievements while the Caribbean has none. This is so disheartening. That is why we in China, we are teaching our younger generation about the important history of the Caribbean. Why we are doing this? Because we respect the Caribbean and we believe in the significance, the value of the Caribbean people. So this is what China has been doing. We confer we treat the Caribbean friends with unconditional respect. Someday, if you come to my center, meet my students and colleagues who are doing Caribbean studies, you will be able to feel our enthusiasm and our love for the Caribbean studies. So this is the China Caribbean cooperation mirror of true multilateralism. We are not capitalist motivated. Our investment there is not, like my students who are doing literature researches find in literary works that, Chinese people really, when we are investing in, the cricket stadium and the airport and the Phoenix on the left, the infrastructures, we meant for real social development for the Caribbean countries. And on the right is a picture of Minister Wang Yi during the China CELAC in this May. So Chinese people's investment, especially in infrastructure development, means to help, not to exploit. And also, we believe in economic cooperation. So China Caribbean, just now, Councillor Yang has given you the numbers, which I am not going to repeat. But in general, we know that China Caribbean trade has grown substantially, and Chinese investment create employment and stimulates economic diversification in the Caribbean region, and also social development in the Caribbean. Educational cooperation has expanded. Just now, Councillor Yang talked about Confucius institutes, the language schools, and we during the China CELAC forum, President Xi said that in the following 5 years, we're going to have my memory could be wrong, 5,000 students from the Caribbean to study in China. And my university also welcomes students from the Caribbean. And, you know, COVID-19 seems very far away, but during COVID-19, who want to help the Caribbean people, right? So we mean, what true multilateralism, and also how to revitalize multilateralism. Next page. While unilateralism prevails in many contexts, China-Caribbean cooperation firmly upholds multilateralism. First of all, we jointly supporting multilateral institution reform. Developing countries deserve greater representation and voice in international institutions. China and Caribbean countries work together, advancing this reform agenda and jointly opposing unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction. Countries share interests in defending the principle that international disputes should be resolved through dialogue, not coercion, and jointly promoting a more just international order. And now we come to the third part, global significance, lessons for the global South, multilateralism. From a global South perspective, what does China-Caribbean cooperation signify for the broader world? Our cooperation offers significance far beyond bilateral relations, providing lessons and inspirations for all developing countries. And first of all, it demonstrates alternative development pathways. For decades, developing countries were told only one development path existed: adopt Western political and economic systems, implement structural adjustment programs, open markets unconditionally, and await prosperity trickling down. This model has largely failed to deliver promised results. While the China-Caribbean cooperation demonstrates alternative pathways exist, development can proceed through South-South cooperation based on equality and mutual benefit. Countries can maintain development strategy autonomy while engaging productivity with external partners. Infrastructure and productive capacity can be built through cooperation, respecting sovereignty and avoiding political conditionalities. This does not mean China offers a wholesale model for copying. Rather, China-Caribbean cooperation shows developing countries have options, can choose partners and modalities suiting their circumstances, and need not accept prescriptions that failed elsewhere. So amplifying the global South voice, individually, small developing countries struggle to be heard in international forums. Collectively, through solidarity and coordination, they can amplify influence. We should work together, all the developing countries. China-Caribbean cooperation contributes to this collective voice. When China and the Caribbean countries coordinate positions in multilateral venues, they strengthen developing countries' negotiating power overall. They can more effectively advocate for institutional reform, resist unilateral coercion, and promote development-friendly policies. We have China, we have the modernization of Chinese style, which has proven very successful. China has taken on a road that is different from what the West has offered. But look at where we are. I have many friends from the Caribbean. Whenever they come to China, they tell me the same thing. They said, only by coming to China, they realize how successful the economy is, how prosperous the country is, and how happy people here are. I have many, friends from the influencer groups, from the diplomats groups. They call me their Chinese mama because China, they feel so much at home and welcome. This is how we treat, how we practice true multilateralism. So, and together, I think I will shorten my speech. So let's move to writing a new chapter for the global South together. How can we work together? We need to have dialogues like this with each other. We don't need someone to tell us what we should do, which path we should follow. So to write a new chapter of true multilateralism for the global South together, our answer is very clear and unwavering. China supports multilateralism, and we firmly uphold international fairness and justice. We firmly stand in solidarity and cooperation with developing countries. Just now, Councillor Yang mentioned in this May, President Xi Jinping proposed the 5 initiatives for the Community of Shared Future for China and Latin America and the Caribbean. Solidarity, development, peace, civilization, and people-to-people connectivity. So we mean what we do. And I think President Xi Jinping, with these 5 initiatives, has, as Councillor Yang very wisely summarized just now, has outlined us the route for a mode of true multilateralism. With those 5, if we practice those 5 initiatives, we not only build a shared future, that's also the spirit. We are also practicing the spirit of multilateralism. And, in the Caribbean, there is a very famous philosopher. My students are studying this, Edward Glissant. He said, the philosophy of the tout monde, the whole world. The Caribbean is neither closed nor marginal. It is both center and periphery. So this insight reveals a very deep truth. There is no eternal center and no permanent periphery. Every country, every region, every people has inherent worth and dignity. So let's move to the last slide. Please, the next one. So I hope, with that, not the previous, still the previous, with the previous slide. So with dialogues like this, I really hope someday you can come to China, come to the center, and of course, I will try to visit your campus too. Let us talk face to face. But, I think we should join hands, guided by true multilateralism and aimed at common development and prosperity to write a new chapter of history through global South solidarity and cooperation, and let China-Caribbean cooperation become a model of South-South cooperation, an example of new international relations, and a vivid practice of building a community of shared future for mankind. Now, the last page. Just now, Councillor Yang cited one Chinese poem. I also, we think alike. So I also want to cite this. Those who share the same aspirations are not separated by mountains and seas, although we are so far away from each other, but we care and we share common aspirations. We share our destiny. So this is, of course, this is a picture of a president. So through Though China and the Caribbean are thousands of miles apart, as I said, we have come together like this because we share aspirations. I believe that as long as we uphold common ideals and practice true multilateralism, our cooperation paths will grow ever broader and our friendship tree ever more flourishing. That's all for my presentation. Thank you very much for putting up this together and for giving me this very precious opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Zhu. I think we could give her another round of applause for a very enlightening discussion. These are some of the same themes that we cover in our programs here at the Institute of International Relations. And she emphasized very importantly the distinction between true multilateralism and the traditional multilateralism. Those are the terms she used. And that's a very important distinction because, as you know, a lot of the discussion at the level of the international community has been this worry about the fact that the multilateral frameworks that we set up after the Second World War basically are not working as we thought they would. And that is contributing in large part to some of the problems that we face. So that this distinction about true multilateralism is a very important issue. And so we hope that Professor Zhu would stick around for the discussion afterwards. And I now invite Professor Shen to make his presentation on China's new foreign investment law and the new normal.
Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. First, I want to thank the organizer for kind invitation, offering me this opportunity to share thoughts with you. Second, my apology for not being with you. I hope I could join you in person next time. My major is international law, international economic law. So today I will focus on China's new foreign investment law and the investment environment in new normal. So what's new normal? Basically, new normal refers to a new stage of economic development. After China adopted the open door and economic reform in 1979, China had over 3 decades long fast-speed economic growth. Recently, China's economic development entered into a new stage with a new speed of economic growth. Basically, that's annual GDP growth rate of 5 to 6%. Previously, we only focused on attracting foreign investment into China. Now we also adopt the policy of Go Globally strategy, as well as Belt and Road Initiative, encouraging Chinese companies to invest overseas. In the past decade, Chinese government has started to open up its financial markets to overseas investors and promoted Chinese currency, renminbi, to be used globally. So this is the so-called renminbi internationalization strategy. There's a imbalancing efforts. This is a two-pronged efforts. One is to not only focus on manufacturing, real estate, but also focusing on domestic consumption. The other is not only to pursue trade surplus, but also to rebalance economic and trade relationship with other countries. So, for example, China is having so-called import convention on an annual basis in order to widen or broaden trade relationship with other countries, having more imported goods from other countries. Globally, we are still in the post-financial crisis era. Major powers and developed countries are in debt crises. After the COVID-19 pandemic, the global economic growth is slowing down. We are still in the recovery process. Unfortunately, there's a revival of protectionism or even populism, which means some major countries are focusing on themselves instead of deglobalization. They are trying to deglobalize or reglobalize, or basically that means they are trying to slowing down globalization. They are only trying to focus on their domestic economic growth and manufacturing industries instead of promoting globalization and world trade system, so on and so forth. There's an emergence of a fairer trading system, but actually that's a much more close global trading system, no longer based on WTO. WTO is in a collapse. WTO's dispute settlement system is in a collapse. Unfortunately, we are also witnessing the strategic competition between major powers, great powers. They are, although we are still having some dialogues with other countries, but the overall picture is in a puzzling situation. Previously, China is a major developing country, but now China has become a major global economic engine, pushing forward deglobalization, multilateralism, so on and so forth. This is the picture showing you FDI, foreign direct investment, is no longer as important as trade. Previously, trade and FDI, foreign direct investment, are driving force for global economic development. But nowadays, FDI, the investment, is slowing down, although trade is continuing to develop. As you can see from this picture, the global FDI has not recovered to the peak in 2007 before the global financial crisis in 2008. As a matter of fact, we are still in a recovery period, seeing a slowing development or growth of FDI globally. On the other hand, as you can see from this slide, in 2000, globally we have more liberalization or promotion measures taken by the countries to promote FDI. And we see very few restrictions or regulatory measures taken by countries to contain FDI. But now the whole picture is in a change. As you can see from the slide, more and more restrictive measures have been taken, have been put in place by the countries all over the world. So you can see gradually we see more restrictions in the FDI, and we see less and fewer liberalization or promotion measures taken by the countries in the field of international investment law. Up to 2020, after the in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, basically this is even. Half is the restrictive measures, and half is the encouraging measures. So the global FDI landscape is not promising. This is a very important event. This is a very important measure taken by the U.S. government in 2018 to modernize its CFIUS review system. CFIUS review system basically is a committee set up by the President of the U.S. To discuss, to review the foreign investment projects on the grounds of national security. And based on this so-called Foreign Investment Restriction Modernization Act, more measures, as a matter of fact, are taken by the U.S. government to restrict foreign investment. And this is the slide showing you how Chinese investment landscape is changed. It has been changed after this Modernization Act was put in place. In 2016, China became the third country after the Second World War, becoming the largest foreign investor into the U.S. But because of this CFIUS review system, this Foreign Investment Modernization Act, China's investment into the U.S. Dropped dramatically in 2017 and 2018, almost 90% less than before. And we only have a small window for China investment into the European Union. And the European Union actually was also taking measures to restrict foreign investment. Previously, the EU has no so-called foreign investment review system or national security review system. But in 2019, the EU adopted a so-called foreign investment screening system to restrict foreign investment on the ground of national security. So China's investment into EU also dropped dramatically after 2019, almost 90% less than before. Meanwhile, China is trying to trying to put forward or push the globalization by putting forward the Belt and Road Initiative. So we see multiple routes along the countries. This is the picture showing you. We probably have, this large picture covering the entire Asia and Europe, as well as other regions like the Southeast region. So we have 3 land routes connecting various parts with China and the rest of the world. We also have 2 sea routes connecting China and the South Pacific Ocean, as well as the Caribbean area. So what's the Belt and Road? The basic focus is to strengthen the collaboration, cooperation between China and the rest of the world. So we focus on 5 perspectives. One is policy coordination. We also talk about facilities connectivity. We try to have more trading, stronger trading relationship with all these Belt and Road countries. And we also focus on financial integration. For example, we set up AIIB. We have a new development bank among BRICS countries. Recently, we decided, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization decided to have its own bank. So these are new frontiers in the financial areas. Apart from economic cooperation and collaboration, people and people bonding is also important. This is also the policy perspective of Belt and Road Initiative. So altogether, this is the picture showing you the major focuses of Belt and Road. These are the key areas of Belt and Road Initiative cooperation, very different from Western country-centered financial institutions focusing on lending to developing countries. We try to focus on infrastructure, connectivity, financial cooperation, G2G policy, cooperation, B2B, people to people, bonding, cultural exchange, educational exchange. So all these are put in the umbrella of Belt and Road Initiative. So basically, the new normal has changed the landscape of China's economic development as well as its economic relationship with the rest of the world. China wants to have a high quality economic development. For example, we are no longer only focused on industry, manufacturing industries. We also focus on climate change, environmental protection, labor protection, human rights protection. So we are changing our economic growth model. As President Xi said, we are trying to have a high quality development in the long run. And the financial market is another perspective of our new normal. We are trying to have a more inclusive financial market instead of an exclusive financial market. Renminbi internationalization is the policy perspective of this new normal. We try to use renminbi more often in trade, in investment, in financial activities because of these financial sanctions imposed by the US government on China's high-tech companies. Free trade zones are in China, we have over 20 free trade zones. Free trade zones basically are experimenting new policies, more liberal and more innovative policies, encouraging both inbound and outbound investment as well as other trade measures. So as a whole, we are trying to improving the quality of our legal infrastructure, improving investment environment. What's the implication of this new normal? What's the implication of China's economic policies or new economic measures? Basically, one implication is we have more opportunities for other countries to collaborate with us. We are focusing on multiple things, not only on trade and investment, but also on infrastructure. There's a huge infrastructure gap between what Belt and Road countries have and what they really need. But this gap is not able to be filled by only Western countries centered financial institutions like ADB, World Bank, and IMF. That's why AIIB and NDB are offering public goods by filling in the gap for the infrastructure build up. So potentially the implication is there are more opportunities for other countries to collaborate with China. Potentially that's also the opportunity for the US and the EU to collaborate with China. But unfortunately, some countries, some major powers are having this zero-sum mindset. So they try to treat China as the key strategic competitor instead of economic collaborator. So let me give you a picture of how China is improving its investment environment. As you know, the World Bank has its so-called Doing Business Index. And China has greatly, substantially improved its Doing Business Index in the past decade. In more recent IMF review, World Bank review survey, China's ranking in this Doing Business Index substantially improved to the 31 globally on the ease of doing business rankings with a score of 77.9 out of 100. This is the paragraph I cited from this World Bank survey. China has undertaken substantial efforts to improve the domestic business climate for small and medium-sized enterprises, maintaining an active pace of reforms. World Bank country director for China said laudable progress has been achieved on a number of doing business indicators, particularly in the area of construction permitting. Let me give you some examples. As you can see on this slide, take one example, starting a business. China has shortened the time needed for starting a business, and this is number 27 globally. Dealing with construction permits, number 33 globally. Getting electricity, we are doing very well. Number 12, China is able to offer a massive amount of electricity to the enterprises, to the companies. Unlike other countries, we never experienced any electricity supply shortage. Registering property, number 28, we get 81 out of 100. Getting credit, it's becoming easier and easier for medium and small sized enterprises. Protecting minority investors, we recently revised our company law in 2023, and 2023 company law has been has come into effect, and under this new company law, more measures have been taken to protect minority investors. All these items can show you Chinese government, China's legislature are trying very hard to improve the investment environment for foreign investors as well as for domestic investors. This is a very long list of items. As you can see, China is doing much better compared to 10 years ago. There are many, basically doing business survey divided all rights protection items into several categories, and on each category, Chinese government is improving our legal system. So this is why I said the entire legal infrastructure is improving. This is beneficial to foreign investors as well as domestic investors when they come to invest. They can save compliance cost, they can save cost for new investment. So again, Chinese legislature overhauled the entire legal system for foreign investment. Previously, China has 3 foreign investment laws. One is the equity joint venture law, the other is the contractual joint venture law. We also have a wholly foreign owned enterprise law. These foreign invested laws, foreign invested enterprises laws are separate from Chinese companies. So basically, we have this dual track system, this parallel system. One system applied to domestic company, the other system applied to foreign invested enterprises. And in 2019, the Chinese National People's Congress passed the new foreign investment law, which replaced 3 FIE laws. Previously, to establish an FIE needs approval and registration. So in terms of how much time an investor needs to set up a company, the average period of time spans from 30 days to 90 days. But now we only have registration system. Foreign investors does not need approval for setting up a foreign invested company. So now the period of time is much shortened to only weeks 1 or 2 weeks. So to establish an FIE only needs registration. This also save compliance costs, save the cost for setting up a company in China. Previously, foreign investor market access is subject to the foreign investment industry sector catalog. We have a quite complicated catalog system separating all the industries into into 4 categories: restricted, permitted, encouraged, and prohibited. Now we only have a negative list, meaning some industries are not allowed for foreign investors, but other industries are opened up to foreign investors. So this is basically streamlining the entire approval system, registration system for the foreign investors. So countrywide, the market access is subject to a negative list, only 106 items. In free trade zones, this negative list is much shorter, probably only to 40 or 48 items. China is also focusing on regional economic integration. As you know, Chinese government has applied to be a member of CPTPP, which is Pan-Asia Pacific Free Trade Agreement, including 11 members. Our application is under review. We are trying to fill in the gap between our trading and investment system, as well as all these investment norms and trade norms in the CPTPP. So we are also trying to have more deeper financial integration. So as I said before, we collaborated with other countries to set up AIB, NDB, SCO Bank. All these financial institutions basically have different approach to sovereignty lending. We do not impose any restrictions on the borrowing country, but IMF, World Bank, and the ADB traditionally impose requirements and conditions on the borrowing countries. If they want to borrow money from IMB, you have to change your labor law, you have to change your bankruptcy law. In the Asian financial crisis in 1997, South Korea government wanted to borrow money from IMB, and the U.S. government asked the South Korea government to change its bankruptcy law. But AIB, NDB, SCO Bank, all these financial institutions supported by the Chinese government never impose any requirements or conditions on borrowing countries if they need funding. BRI goes beyond economic integration. BRI also focus on people-to-people bonding, infrastructure connectivity, so on and so forth. So basically, all these become public goods for global south. So basically, we are seeing a new model of alliance or association among states under the umbrella of BRI and under the support of the Chinese government to have a stronger and deeper linkage between China and the rest of the world. We are not trying to only focus on China's interest. We're also trying to promote other countries' benefits, because our culture believe people to people, country to country is not a zero-sum relationship, is a mutually beneficial relationship, which is completely different from other countries, especially Western countries' philosophy and ideology. So we have our own version of globalization, which basically is a true multilateralism. How about governance standards? We are not sacrificing standards for this China's version of globalization. We are also, for example, in the financial area, the AIB, NDB still stick to the best practices in lending. We still look at the environment protection, labor protection, ESG, and climate change. These are so-called best practices in sovereignty lending. So basically, there's a mismatch between China's political economic philosophy and Western denominated global views of values. So we are trying to have a community of common destiny. We are trying to practicing implementing this ideology. I did some research, as you can see from this table. All the Caribbean countries are on the left side. The second column is a diplomatic relationship. We have a diplomatic relationship with most of the Caribbean countries. The third column is a BIT, bilateral investment treaty. As you can see, for example, we have this bilateral investment treaty with Cuba in 2008, Jamaica in 2010. But certainly, we probably didn't have bilateral investment treaties with Haiti and other, but we have bilateral investment treaties with Barbados. FTA probably is the area we can work together in order to encourage deeper integration and deeper collaboration between China and Caribbean countries. At this moment, we don't have any free trade agreement with any country in Caribbean area. But the last column is interesting. We have already signed many so-called Belt and Road Initiative documents. We signed many memorandum of understanding between Chinese government and the Caribbean countries in order to promote and implement Belt and Road Initiative on the infrastructure, on the educational collaboration, and other frontiers. So in the future, as you can see, in order to implement the Belt and Road Initiative, in order to deepen China's economic and investment trading relationships with Caribbean areas, we can focus, we can work on free trade agreement, we can upgrade our bilateral investment treaties, we probably can continue to work on more Belt and Road Initiative documentations to work on more projects to benefit the entire region. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Shen. As he dealt fundamentally with international financial arrangements and in particular development financing, which is very, very important to the Caribbean. As most of you would know, the Caribbean is highly dependent on foreign capital, and traditionally, the capital has come from the Americans and Europe and so on. But increasingly, China is playing a big role in this field as well. And it's therefore something that we need to pay a lot of attention to. So this is a very important area and is something that we will be focusing on a lot in the future. So that brings to the end the presentation from both of the professors from China. We are running a little bit late, and we are supposed to have, I think, a coffee break now, but if it's possible, if people could just get a coffee and come back to the table, we want to move on. Maybe the next thing we have on the agenda is a panel discussion, and if the panel, I want to invite the panelists to come up to the head table. If the secretariat could change the name tag, that would be great. So we'll take about a 5-minute break, and we will get back to the panel discussion shortly.
all protocols being observed, I'm not going to repeat them. Thank you very much for being here. My job is to be moderator, not the speaker. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business. We are part of the university. And with me this morning is Mr. Kiran Singh on my right-hand side, who is the head of the Greater, yes. The Greater San Fernando Chamber of Commerce, and therefore no stranger to the world of business. And on my left, former central bank governor, former Minister of Finance, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, author, university lecturer, right, and professor of practice, Professor Winston Dukaran. So if you want to say I'm just here to move and calibrate these two gentlemen in terms of the responses. In terms of, we have to apologize this morning for the absence of Mr. Siko Allen, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Global Trinidad and Tobago, which was responsible for, if you want, courting business and bringing investment to Trinidad and Tobago. He unfortunately has been called to a meeting with his minister, and in those circumstances, didn't have the luxury of saying no. So he did say to us, no. So apologies on his behalf, and we have not been able to find a replacement in the meantime. I would like to congratulate the department on putting together this seminar, particularly with regard to trade and trade with China. China has been one of the startling revelations of the last 40 years, if only because it adopted capitalism in a fashion which was not thought possible, and in the process has grown to be one of the major world powers, particularly in the area of trade. Manufacturing as a percentage of Chinese GDP, of China's GDP, is somewhere about 28%. When we speak of manufacturing, China, in a sense, has become the manufacturer to the world, and as a result, has dominated world exports, where approximately 37% of the trade in 37% of China's GDP is accounted for by manufacturing and manufactured exports, which compares, how shall we say, it dwarfs the operation of any of the developed countries in terms of their capacity to export and their ability to influence world markets and world market share in particular. China's trade as a percentage of world trade is still one of the largest, if not the largest trading partner. It accounts for approximately between 10 and 14% of world trade. In particular, with respect to the Caribbean and Latin America, China is not the major trading partner of Latin America. The United States still holds that position, but its trade has grown from approximately 2% of Latin America trade in 2000 to approximately 15% at today's date. It has dwarfed the multilateral lending institutions in terms of the amount of money that has either been loaned and or invested in Latin America. And that has amounted to somewhere in the region of 120 billion US dollars in that time frame, between those 25 years. That information doesn't necessarily come from me. It comes from the Foreign Affairs, which, as you know, Foreign Affairs Journal, which is, as you know, partly a mouthpiece of the State Department. So the numbers, I'm certain, are reasonably correct. Having said that, China's exports to the region have largely been still in the form of manufactured goods, and the exports from Latin America to China have been in the form of what one would call primary goods. So there's still that sort of imbalance. But the region shares a similarity in terms of China's recent experience, and hence the emphasis on the need for true multilateralism and, in a sense, equity and fairness in trade. And that is represented in a way by China's 15 years of negotiation to enter the WTO. And when it finally did enter the WTO, you can say that the United States has frustrated the rules for its operation. And we are now faced with a completely different method of approach, where we've talked about free trade, literally for all of the period following the Second World War. We are now removing or moving back to a period of mercantilism. So we are happy to have this seminar to talk about the importance of free trade and where we need to go in terms of development and prosperity and in terms of South-to-South cooperation. In particular, and that has been a feature, if there's one thing that can be said in terms of the post-war era, where the institutions were established in a sense to represent the power or the powers that won the war, the development of the developing or the development of developing countries in that period has really been about how do we improve South-to-South cooperation and change the relationship with developed countries, OECD countries in particular. Now, Trinidad and Tobago and many Latin American countries, it's not necessarily well noted in the textbooks, have a long history of trade with China, as well as movement of people in terms of what you would call immigration, certainly in Peru, certainly in Brazil, and a number of other countries, and certainly in Trinidad and Tobago as well. We have two illustrious, a son and a daughter, who themselves went back to China and became part of the Chinese bureaucracy and Chinese success. One is Dai Ailan, who became the first lady of dance in China, and also born in Cuba, and another son born in San Fernando, who became a minister of foreign affairs in the 1930s, Eugene Chen. So our relationship, if you will, with China has had a long relationship. Now the real issue is how do we develop those trading links, particularly, and it becomes particularly poignant given the comment which was made by one of our presenters, Professor Minzu, when she spoke of the difference between the center and the periphery, and that sometimes you can move irretrievably between them. The Caribbean was a center at one point in time because this was where wealth was determined. This is the wealth that was created by the sugar trade that eventually led to the Industrial Revolution and the development of the OECD countries. Now, you can say that we're on the periphery. China has been on the periphery or was on the periphery for a number of years. A century that they call the lost century. Now it has returned to the center. So that in a sense is the conversation we want to have in terms of how does that development, how does the development of China create opportunities for win-win partnership with the Caribbean and with Latin America. So these two distinguished gentlemen with me are going to talk about what's possible in that regard. So I'm going to turn to my colleague, Professor Winston Dukran, to ask him to give a few words in that regard.
Right. Thank you very much, Mariano. And you have, in a very encyclopedic way, put statistics before us, as you always do on the newspapers and elsewhere. So I will follow up what you said by also commenting about some of the issues that were raised during the course of this morning presentation, and to thank Dr. Suratan for asking me to share some thoughts with my good friend Kiran Singh and yourself here this morning. I think we were treated with some very interesting insights. And I believe it was Dr. Suratan who said the three words that we are focusing on is what has been described as true multilateralism, South-South cooperation, and China-Caribbean relations. Now, those three words connotate a lot that has happened over time. History is well known, but the contemporary situation has created a new set of forces to which we must respond, not only as the Caribbean, but even as Trinidad and Tobago. What are these forces? I believe it was Professor Saran who spoke on behalf of the university this morning, raised the issue of rebalancing, that the world is in a period of rebalancing for whatever reasons and for whatever may have generated those forces. We are in a period of rebalancing. But that rebalancing has meant that a lot of the institutions and economic institutions in particular has found itself without a mandate. Because in the rebalancing of the political order of the times, the mandate of these institutions have lost some of its mandate, or if not all in some cases. Caribbean integration is is one such institution. And to some extent, it has now reflected a feeling of tiredness, notwithstanding what has happened today. This has been going on for some time. But true multilateralism is really the result of the reordering process. So today in my remarks, I want to do two things. I want to essentially go through with you some of the issues relating to multilateralism. I think Professor Min Zhu spoke very well, or very authoritatively on the issue of the new multilateralism. What I would like to do is to share with you some recent research, because as we try to define a new relationship in South-South cooperation in the context of this concept called new multilateralism, what has been written within recent times about this situation, which will set the basis for the response that we have to take. I came across a very interesting paper very recently that was written by a think tank, or authors in a think tank called GlobeSec. I don't think we are much familiar with that think tank. It's really a think tank that operates in Slovak Republic. And two authors, John Allen and Corey Cozy, wrote an interesting paper on rebalancing and the implication of rebalancing to the global order. And this is what I want to just share with you as a basis for responding to a Caribbean response to this situation. And I quote from what it is said. But before I quote, on the last occasion that I had to speak at this very place on Caribbean integration, I did talk about the need for a multipolar world that is emerging. I wondered, even after I said it, whether I was correct, that whether we are in a multipolar world, and at that time, I tried to provoke the audience by saying that we are in a no-polar world, rather than a multipolar world. I was quite surprised that the audience picked up that. And many of the audience, who were mainly people from the Caribbean academia and policymakers, wanted to know what I meant by the no-polar world. Because we seem to think that we move from the old polar, whatever we want to call it, to a multipolar world. And therefore, the big powers in the world are now trying to create their own version of that multipolarity. And it's something that we must be aware of. And what we will hear from the big powers, not only in terms of the global powers, but even in terms of the regional powers. they have created their own version of that multipolarity. So this quote that I want to give to you from the authors that I have mentioned said this, and I quote, "The post-Cold War globalization focused on international order is fractured, yielding what they call a multipolar chaos. A volatile environment marked by geopolitical rivalry, technological decoupling, and weaponizing interdependence, and a nearly unconstrained upward spiral of emerging technologies." I will elaborate a bit on that. So the word multipolar chaos became, in this article, and something that seemed to appeal to me, given my earlier comments about no polar world. What do we really mean? What are the new forces at work that are now going to be contended with in trying to navigate our position in whatever world we want to call it? Well, they identified in that very paper, an interesting paper, 3 different shifts that are taking place momently in the world. One is the geopolitical capability of AI and its related technologies. It went on to argue that those technological changes that are taking place, spearheaded by the new technology of AI, is really going to have geopolitical effects. Who has access to it? Who do not have access to it? How it is being used, and how would it be influence the factors of production in a country? This is one of the key issues. The second shifts that they suggest is taking place is what is called the techno-political blocks. The techno-political blocks. Techno-political blocks will dominate investment and value change. So what we got to look at is which blocks are the really technologically superior blocks. Among the global blocks or the regional blocks or the combination of them. They will affect global governance and regulation. And they will eclipse what I believe Professor Min Zhu said, they will eclipse traditional multilateralism, which is what she went on to establish. And the third shift that has taken place, which was also mentioned by Professor Zhu in her remarks, economic weaponization, she said, of institutions. But she said economic institutions of policy driven by critical supply chains and technology gains will eclipse the rule-based trade. Now, these are very deep and profound statements in terms of the shifts that we are going to face in the future. Because the new multilateralism is not a continuation of the old multilateralism and filling out the gaps that have arisen because of the new balancing of the world order. That's the first point I'm making. According to this paper, which I found very persuasive, the new multilateralism is not the result of trying to fix the old multilateralism in response to the vacuum that has developed because of the new balancing order in global politics. And that's the first general point that I'm making. And I believe my friend Bernardo from the CAF institution, Latin American Development, he mentioned it to me in a brief conversation during a short coffee break, that there is a kind of different order that is emerging. So I said, well, I just want to follow up, Bernardo, what you yourself have said. So we therefore are facing what has been described a multipolar chaos. Now, in the Caribbean, we are very much attuned to making platitudinous statements, and sometimes we call it political peacock. But behind that, there must be some forces at work. And we got to understand in the region, what are these forces ahead of us, and therefore, how must we adjust our own integration movement, which has become tired for whatever reasons. What are the drivers of this chaos? There are essentially three drivers. Technology competition, you mentioned that, Mariano. Ideological divergences, part of the popular interpretation of what's going on. And the third one is resource scarcity. And we see a lot of discussion about mineral rights and so forth taking place in today's world. So there are three fundamental economic forces that are going to emerge in order for us to define this multipolar chaos. The question, therefore, that we have to face is how will these shifts affect South-South cooperation? I cannot answer that question. I can only ask the question because of what I said earlier, that there are multiple polars, global polars, and regional polars that are now vying to fill that space. And therefore, recently I was given a talk in New Delhi to, I think it was called something about intelligence, which is India's version of multipolarism. My friend who is here today, who was the former ambassador to India and to South Africa for Trinidad and Tobago, told me that both countries are querying the fundamental premises of multilateralism. And I thought of it and I said, you have perhaps written what I was going to say today. Because when you look at these two countries, you will see that they are trying to look at multilateralism in a different way now. But each one is looking at it from the point of view of their national interests. No one is looking at it from the point of view of the interests of small states. And I think what we are getting now is a lot of lip service towards small states' participation in the new multilateralism that is emerging. And that is the first step in reviewing this whole issue of multilateralism. Okay, sure.
If I just, that was a big picture. So now we want to move a little bit more to this small picture. Don't clap at me if you have the opportunity to ask him questions. When he answers them, you could let him then. So the point that was made by Professor Wing Chen when he was talking in terms of the changes in law, but he made some very important points, particularly with regard to business. And business is really about getting down to the details. So we have, if you want, the head of the San Fernando Greater Chamber of Commerce to talk about the details. Now, he raised some issues: policy coordination, facilities connectivity, unimpeded trade, financial integration. Now, financial integration is something that should hold our attention, particularly in a time when we're having difficulty with foreign exchange. How do we pay our bills? And in what currency? Now, that raises a number, if you want, of geopolitical issues, but it raises some basics at the level of what do we do, how do we do it, and how do we trade, and who do we trade with? So I want to put that question to Kiran in the sense of, well, when you look around Trinidad and Tobago, you see the evidence of Chinese involvement and Chinese investment, Chinese loans, Chinese construction capacity, all right? So from your perspective, in terms of the businessman on the ground, what do you have to say in that regard?
Good morning to my fellow panelists and good morning to the audience. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words this morning. What we need to address with China, China has been a long time trading partner with Trinidad and of course the wider Caribbean. And we want to continue that relationship building on our existing foundations that we have had with China. It's been a very positive relationship. And we need to take bigger steps towards encouraging and fostering a greater relationship, especially with the US imposing some new tariff structures and regimes that would impact upon us negatively from a trade point of view, especially. And we can benefit with more trade with China. And on my recent visits to China, this was explored through several seminars on trade and services and so on, which benefited us from a business community perspective. And what we see is that first, to really benefit, we would need some policy adjustments from the local enterprise, the government. We would need to see those statements being made in the financial appropriation bills through Parliament that to foster that greater harmony with the business community that can do more trade with China. The currency issue is very important. We know that the US dollar continues to command great attention. And if we could find some mechanism to move away from the reliance on the US dollar in doing trade with China and somehow use their currency directly, maybe we develop that less reliance on the US dollar. And the US dollar holds so much power because of the fact that oil trades in US dollars. There's a conversation going on globally with the BRICS and these great nations to move away from this US dollar. And if we could join that conversation and seriously move away from that US dollar, we would be in a much more significant trading position and become more competitive in the global market. The services sector, we talk about trade, increasing the exportation of goods. The services sector is a $1 trillion industry worldwide. If we can somehow harness that with the assistance of China, because that is where they are pushing their agenda in terms of the services. They're now, apart from a world producer, the factory of the world, and they are now considered a leader in innovation, in AI, green technology, renewable energy. And this is where we should be focusing more of our efforts. And the business community is ready to work with them. Green hydrogen, all of these assets can be utilized in Point Lisa Estate, for instance. We know that that is happening. And we can generate further activity, further interest in these fields going forward. I want to pause for Mariano to continue.
All right, well, our time frame was 12:20, 12:35. So we've had two panelists who've given you some broad ideas in terms of where to go and what to happen. And I thought one of the ideas that small countries always have to live with the idea of dealing with a big giant, particularly one the size of China, which dwarfs us. But at the same token, there's always a capacity to learn from each other. And the example for that would be at the moment, a visit made by Professor Emeritus Gary Garcia at the moment, who's in China, was invited by a technical institute because his research is in what we call the peccary, which some of us know as a quenk. And one of the issues that has come up in China is that the use of European breeding stock. They have, in a sense, missed the opportunity in terms of breeding their own stock. So it was an issue, an idea about changing or sharing technical knowledge in terms of what is possible using native species of animals to meet dietary requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So it is always possible that we could learn from one another in terms of differences in trade, differences in technology. Even small countries sometimes have things that we can teach. But having said that, I want to open up the floor to this discussion and to some questions with respect to the points which were made by the panel and any other ideas that you may have or questions that you may have that you may wish us to answer. So I open the floor.
Ni hao to our guests and good morning, good afternoon to all. Well, this is a broad, big topic and it's valid for these times because I just want to draw on a few points. When the gold standard had to change, few countries, states came together. We reach now in the 21st century and we have had a lot of different groups forming like the ASEAN and so plus China, you know, and the reason for this is that there's a shift, as Professor Dukaran say, in the polarity, multipolarity, and the interest of state is that the bigger states will be vying for their interests. Now, the US and China could be at loggerhead for some reason, but they are individual sovereign states, and they will deal with the interests of their internal values. But however, the aim of having multilateralism is that we cooperate to follow the sustainable development goals. And most states are doing poverty as one of the most important goals to help people. And in most times we talk about we the people. In each country and constitution have we the people, but we the people need stability in the economy, in environment, technology, as spoken. And the thing is, if states are the main actors and we talk, we dialogue, well, we have to find that common ground to bring the interests of we the people and benefit we the people in a mutual way. So from the thinkers, how are we going to bring South-South cooperation when a lot of the economy have different levels? So that's my question.
Thank you for that question. Who's going to take it?
I would just, that's a multifaceted question. I'll just deal with one piece of it, which I think is significant. We talk about money and the institutions for the creation of money is now going to undergo a transformation. And we won't go into details here, but you are totally correct that money has had its value as a form of exchange. And the US dollar, which my friend talked about, has been the major medium of such exchange in international trade, certainly for the Caribbean. But there are signs now that that is going to change and that the medium of exchange is no longer going to be money itself, nor is it going to be the US dollar on its own, but it's going to be perhaps a combination of many different currencies and also many different kinds of currencies outside of the commodity of money. And therefore, I take your point very well that I think we got to prepare for it. And I think we got to advance the cause of increasing our transaction in international trade by anticipating some of these measures. And it's good for the private sector to do it, but it's also necessary for the state sector to set up the regulatory mechanism so that the private sector can in fact benefit from it.
Absolutely right.
No, it's sometimes nice to be asking a question rather than answering them. So, you know, something that has always intrigued me is that, you know, in any discussion about the Caribbean and its challenges, we always focus in on this thing called small size. And I often remember when I was a very, very young economist and had big hair then, governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Sir U.W.I, who some of you may know. He said, Dave, you know, people always complain about small size and all the problems related to small size. But he said, you know what? And he lived in St. Kitts at the time. He, I think, was a Vincentian who worked in St. Lucia and then was governor in St. Kitts. He said, when you have small countries, you have small problems. And when you have big countries, you have big problems. And there are certain inherent advantages to being small that we don't ever consider, right? And one of them, of course, is that you could be more flexible. You could change course more readily. A big country like China, you would know, Ambassador, is very, very difficult to pivot, right? So there are some advantages to being small. And I want Kieran probably to comment on this issue of a small side. How do we use it to our advantage? How do businessmen start rethinking how they operate in a small economy and how they could leverage that small size to their advantage?
Thanks for that question, Dave. Speaking from the SME sector, of course, who we represent in San Fernando, we are now in the world of AI, and business, being successful in business is about being able to adapt to change. And COVID would have taught us that painful lesson over those years. We had to retool, remake, remodel, change the entire way we do business. Zoom, virtual meetings, all these things came about so successfully as that was the silver line in the dark cloud of the pandemic that we survived. And coming from a small business, it is easier for us to rethink how we do laborious work. The 40-hour work week has changed in terms of we working from home. When a large corporation, the logistics can be a nightmare to convert the way they think in terms of doing business, because it has to keep track of your labor force, keep track of your plant and equipment, your machinery that requires that supervision, that the cost overruns. Your economies of scale can become uncompetitive as you grow if you're not able to manage your logistical financial challenges as you expand. And the smaller business can be more profitable if managed properly with their finances. So we tend to be more advantageous. That is why some small businesses, when we had a recent conversation, a seminar some weeks ago about encouraging people to enter the stock exchange. And of course, we are a bit behind in terms of getting onto the public market for funding. They're a bit wary. Small businesses tend to be more family oriented, owned by partners and family members. So they always look at the stock market a bit suspiciously. But it also teaches us that before you get to the stock market, you better have your businesses in order, because then you open yourself to public scrutiny and competition that is on a global scale. And then if you're not prepared to handle that, your business could be in jeopardy by the big sharks out there will literally eat you alive. So we consider ourselves to be in an advantageous position from an SME perspective, and we champion that and cherish it. And sometimes we're able to navigate the economic misfortunes that hit us from time to time, especially in a small open economy like ours. Thanks.
So thank you. This is Dr. Saeed Shah from the Department of Management Sciences, Management Studies, Faculty of Social Science. I would like to take up this opportunity to move from the macro to the micro level. So when we talk of blue ocean opportunities, the panel has brilliantly outlined existing business opportunities that we can have collaborate with the Chinese government and the people. Looking forward, I personally use electroentomology, EEG technology to identify latent, unarticulated consumer needs. So these are the needs that cannot always verbally express. My question is, what sectors or consumer segments do you believe are currently the most misunderstood or undervalued in the China-Caribbean dynamic? And how can a deeper understanding of the Caribbean consumer could help Chinese and Caribbean businesses co-create products and services for these blue ocean opportunities?
Asking Kiran. But Kiran, you, huh? No, you.
As you see, the SME sector has been thrown into the sea of sharks. That question is not easily answered, but what I learned on my recent journeys to China is that we have a lot to learn from the China model of doing business. They're so much more efficient. They're so much more disciplined. Their culture, we have a world of opportunity to learn from this great nation. And we face several challenges. Yes, we are a small economy, but at the same time, we can have niche markets that we can exploit and benefit from. For instance, the manufacture of steel pan, our own indigenous musical instrument, the only invention in the last 100 years. But challenges come and go depending on the nature of the sector that you do business in. To pinpoint the challenges we face, it would be the technology. We need to digitize all the processes from the public service into the private sector to drive the whole economy forward, because this is where we sadly lack in. The ease of doing business is unfortunate that we way down in the rankings, and we need to improve that. In a developed country, you can register a business in minutes. In this country, it takes how long to register the name? 3 weeks, just to register the name. This could be done online in a foreign country in a matter of minutes. The marine sector, I talk about this very often. For a yachty to enter this country, it's a mountain of paperwork. It discourages a person who is coming to spend foreign exchange in this country from entering our shores. And why is that? Where our thinking is so archaic. Right in Guyana, the passport readable machines, you go through customs in minutes. Here, it can take hours if 3 flights enter the same time. How much productivity is lost? How much productivity is lost in the traffic? And I can talk about traffic because I live in San Fernando. And everything we have to go to Port of Spain for. The Port of Spain centric people wouldn't have that problem because they don't come to San Fernando. And that's fine. We have a nice, friendly, hospitable, family-oriented business type arrangement in San Fernando, which we benefit from. But these things need to change if we want to improve how we do business, if we want to become more profitable, if we want to remain competitive on the world market. We have an open economy and we're susceptible to not change. But to those out there who are predatory in nature and can really devour a small business if they see it successful. And we have to protect ourselves from that vantage point. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, it's nice to meet you, everyone here. And before I ask my question, I would love to provide some macro background for my question. So I work with the United Nations, and we actually did the GDP revisions every 3 months. And when we do the GDP revisions, one important factor that we consider is actually international environment. For example, the Fed rate. For example, the the relationship between the major powers and also the international commodity market. So, that's the reason why when I am here and when I hear about the multilateralism, I feel so impressed because it's not actually a choice like for Caribbean countries to choose to support the multilateralism. It's actually an essential imperative to support the multilateralism because every Caribbean countries actually support endorse the policy of export diversification, economic diversification, not only in the commodity market, not only in the commodity countries, but also in the tourism countries. That's the reason why multilateralism is not a choice, but an imperative choice. So, but as you know, like actually the Caribbean countries started the CARICOM like many years ago, but it seems like the progress is very slow, like kind of slow compared with like expected outcome. And I have to say among these Caribbean countries, sometimes it's very expensive, like just to travel like among the Caribbean countries, like it's even more expensive than like if you want to travel to the United States or Canada. So, and also at the same time, when, just now during the lecture, and I think the professor at the Shanghai Jiao Tong University have mentioned the Sea Belt Road. So I just want to ask the question, like, how do you see the prospect of the CARICOM? As we all know, the Chinese actually at the front line of the technology innovations, the artificial intelligence and shipbuildings and the manufacturing. So do you think that China can actually facilitate the whole process of the CARICOM integration, like making it a unified market at a faster pace? And in all aspects, that China can help. For example, the multi-currency trading system or smart infrastructure or digital economy. Thank you.
That's the subject of a PhD, I think, as a thing from a simple question. Would you like to answer that, sir?
I could just add one, because these are very deep questions and they're multifaceted questions. But in terms of the theme of our discussion here, it seems that both questions on this side and this side really were focusing on the need for a very active commercial type of policy, which you talked about a little bit, Kiran, as a basis. What are the requirements for commercial policy from the point of view of the market and from the point of view of the supplier? And maybe if out of this, we could find a mechanism to do that, we might be able to at least delve a little bit into the depths of both questions.
Now, I know that that's a question we could answer when we meet you privately. Right, but I just want to make the point that in terms of our time frame, we've kind of caught up with the agenda, and we were supposed to finish at approximately 12:25 to allow some closing remarks before 12:30. Since it's now 12:35, I think it's about time for me to say thank you very much, and we'll meet in the corridor and have a greater discussion in terms of that question. So I'd like to thank my panelists, and I'd like to thank you, the audience, for being so polite. Thank you very much for your time.
So I have the distinct pleasure of doing the vote of thanks today. So let me just first thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, other distinguished speakers, the Director ad interim of the Institute of International Relations, Dr. Saratan, senior university administrators, professors, lecturers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. So on behalf of the Institute of International Relations and the interim director, Dr. Siratan, I am honored and profoundly privileged to give the vote of thanks today. In that spirit of gratitude, I would like to express our sincere appreciation to His Excellency Ran Hongjian, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, who facilitated and coordinated today's event with the support of the Office of the Campus Principal, U.W.I St. Augustine Campus, and the Office of the Institute of International Relations. His Excellency's continued diplomatic efforts at deepening relations with the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the U.W.I are much appreciated. I wish to also express heartfelt appreciation to our featured speaker, Professor Ming Zhu and Professor Wei Shen, for their inspiring and thought-provoking presentations. Their insights have not only deepened our understanding of China's vision of multilateralism and the strengthening of China-Caribbean relations, but have all, I'm sure you would certainly agree, would have challenged us all here present today to reflect critically and act decisively. Your wealth of experience and clarity of vision have truly enriched today's dialogue. I express also sincere thanks to His Excellency Naomi Espinosa Madrid, Secretary General of the ACS, and His Excellency Dr. Paul Bayam, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, for their excellent contribution at the commencement of this morning's program. Heartfelt thanks are also in order for Dr. Brown and his panelists for the other session, which was just delivered, which allowed for deep dialogue and perspectives on areas critical to our development. Sincere appreciation must also be expressed to the Director of the Graduate Studies section, Professor Sarah Vanna Kumar, who brought greetings on behalf of the Pro-Vice Chancellor and Campus Principal, Professor Rosemary Bell Antoine. And very significantly, that illustrated for us today the great significance and importance of the continued development of relations between the Republic of China, then the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and very significantly, the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus. Special thanks are in order, of course, to the U.W.I Marketing and Communications team, and to, of course, our staff at the Institute of International Relations, technical service staff for their continued support in preparing and organizing the event today. Special acknowledgement and gratitude are also in order to our IIR IT team, Messieurs Maloney and Jonathan Singh. I must sincerely thank all our guests and attendees today who engaged in our panel discussions and offered interesting views. As I close, may I wish all invited guests a pleasant afternoon. Please continue to follow us on the IIR website for upcoming dialogues